prison has been abandoned for years, but visitors keep reporting the same mistake. They walk in 4 minutes and walk out hours later. No missing memories. No panic. Just time that doesn't add up. This happened inside Fremantle Prison. Cave story. The corridor that doesn't match. Fremantle Prison was built to last forever. Thick limestone walls, narrow corridors, and cell blocks designed to disorient inmates. Prisoners were meant to lose track of days, then weeks, then themselves. When the prison closed, guides warned visitors about one thing: never explore alone. In 2017, a small restoration crew entered after hours to survey damage in the older wing. Predios. Timed check-ins at 6:40 p.m. One worker, Daniel, stepped into a short side corridor to photograph a cracked wall. Corridor was barely 10 meters long. The others waited and waited. After 10 minutes, they radioed him. No response. They found Daniel standing at the end of the corridor, staring at the wall. He turned when they called his name. Confused, he insisted he'd only been there 2 minutes. But his watch showed 9:18 p.m. His phone battery was dead. When asked what happened, Daniel described something strange. The corridor felt longer every time he looked away. Doors appeared where there weren't any before. Not opening, just existing. He said he kept walking, expecting to reach the end, but it never came. Then he noticed something worse. The corridor behind him was gone. Its wall. No doorway. No entrance. He said the silence felt busy, like something was moving just out of sight. Eventually, the corridor shortened again. The exit returned, and he stepped out. Security footage confirmed Daniel entered the corridor at 6:40, but cameras inside the wing showed no movement for nearly 3 hours. No pacing, no shadows, no one walking, just Daniel standing still, facing the wall. Since then, guides quietly admit something. The corridor doesn't always connect to the same place. Sometimes it leads back out. Sometimes it doesn't. And every so often, visitors report seeing a man standing at the end of it, facing the wall, waiting for it to open. Again, abandoned prisons weren't built to release people. They were built to hold them. If this story made you uneasy, there are more places like this where walls still decide who gets out. Subscribe, stay watching, because some exits only appear when the prison is finished with you.
This prison wasn't abandoned because it failed. It was abandoned because too many people disappeared without escaping. No ghosts reported, no screams recorded. Just one rule everyone broke before vanishing. This happened on Devil's Island Prison. Thai story. The rule no one survived. Devil's Island Prison was designed to punish without violence. No chains, no torture chambers, just isolation, heat, disease, and the ocean. Prisoners were told one thing upon arrival: never leave your shelter after sunset. Not because of guards, not because of escape attempts, because of what happened when the island cooled. Decades after the prison closed, a marine biologist was stationed nearby to study shoreline erosion. His work required overnight stays on the island, strictly regulated. Fully documented. On his 3rd night, a sudden storm forced him to leave his research cabin and move equipment closer to the shoreline. He broke the rule. At 8:46 p.m. he stepped outside. The island was silent in a way that felt unnatural. No insect, no waves. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then he noticed something strange. Footprints. Not fresh, not old. Perfectly preserved in damp sand, leading from the tree line toward the prison ruins. Bare feet, different sizes. Too many to count. They didn't wander. They all walked in the same direction, toward the water. As he followed them against instinct, he began to hear something faint. Not voices, not movement. Breathing, but not behind him. All around him. Coming from the trees. From the ruins. From the sand itself. The biologist described the sensation later as being observed without being seen. Then he felt it. A pull, not physicomento, like the island was reminding him where people were supposed to go. He turned back just before the shoreline, heart pounding, and ran for shelter. The moment he crossed the cabin threshold, the sounds returned: waves crashing, insects buzzing, wind screaming through the trees. Morning came. When authorities reviewed his GPS tracker, they found something impossible. At 8:52 p.m., his signal stopped moving. For 12 minutes, it showed him standing ankle-deep in the ocean. He insists he never reached the water, but that night, the tide carried something ashore, a rotted wooden plank. Carved into it were words in multiple languages, some incomplete, some barely legible, all saying the same thing. It's easier if you walk. Devil's Island Prison no longer holds inmates, but the island still enforces its rules. So if you ever visit a place meant to erase people, when you feel the urge to keep walking, stop. Because the most dangerous prisons don't lock you in. They convince you to leave everything behind. If you want to hear what other abandoned places still expect from the living, stay here. There are more stories waiting.
This prison was demolished. The walls were torn down. The cells were erased. But something from this place was never buried. People still report panic attacks in the empty space where it once stood. No reason, no memories. Just fear. This happened at Carandiru Penitentiary. T's story. The ground that reacts Carandiru Penitentiary was once the largest prison in South America. Overcrowded, chaotic, violent. When it was finally shut down, officials made a decision they believed would end its story. Forever, they demolished it. Concrete crushed, cells leveled. The land cleared and turned into open public space. No prison, no structure, no reminders. But soon after, something strange began happening. Construction crews reported sudden dizziness while working certain sections of the ground. Surveyors complained of pressure in their chests, as if the air became heavier without warning. No gas leaks, no medical explanations, just one pattern. It always happened in the same locations. Former cell blocks. A geotechnical engineer was brought in to test soil density and ground stability. On paper, the land was safe, flat, neutral, ordinary, until his instruments began to malfunction. Readings spiked and dropped without cause. Vibrations appeared on sensors with no seismic activity. And then something worse. His equipment began logging movement, not underground shifts. Rhythmic pressure, as if weight was being transferred from one point to another. Standing, stopping, standing again. The engineer described a sudden feeling of being surrounded, despite standing in an open park with no one nearby. His breathing quickened, his hands shook. He left early. That night, his wearable monitor showed something impossible. During the time he stood in the former prison yard, his heart rate synced into a steady pattern, then abruptly changed, as if responding to an external cue. As if something else had set the tempo. Later analysis showed similar biometric reactions in other workers, years apart, all in the same zones. Different people. Same response. Fear without stimulus. As if the ground itself remembered what it was like to be full. Carandiru Penitentiary no longer exists. But places don't forget how they were used. If you ever walk through a space that feels wrong for no reason, that tightness in your chest might not be yours. Some locations don't need walls to hold what's left behind. And there are more places like this, erased from maps, but not from memory. Stay here, keep watching. Because some prisons don't disappear. They spread out.
This prison is abandoned, surrounded by open water, cut off from the world, but visitors keep reporting something impossible. The wind here speaks, and it only uses names that once lived inside the walls. This happened on Robben Island Prison. T story. The names the wind refuses to forget. Robben Island Prison was designed to isolate more than bodies. It isolated voices. Inmates were separated from the mainland by miles of cold water, forbidden from shouting across yards, forbidden from gathering, forbidden from being heard. Silence was enforced not just by guards, but by distance. After the prison closed, tour guides began noticing something subtle. On certain days, the wind behaved differently. It didn't howl. It didn't rush. It moved deliberately through corridors, across cells, down walkways where prisoners once marched. In 2018, a heritage conservation worker stayed late to survey erosion damage near the limestone quarry. The island was nearly empty. Tours had ended. Boats had left. As the sun set, the wind picked up. Then it changed. Instead of blowing across the island, it began circling. The worker described it as paced, like something moving room to room. Then he heard it. Not a voice, a word, his name, spoken softly, carried perfectly on the wind, close to his ear. He turned, nothing. Moments later, another name followed, then another, each different, each spoken once, each coming from a different direction. The worker realized something disturbing. The names matched prisoners who had died on the island, some recorded, some not. As he moved toward the main cell block, the wind followed, slipping through bars, bending around corners, never touching him, just staying close enough to listen. Near the courtyard, the wind stopped entirely, dead still. And then all the names came at once. Not shouted, recited, like attendants. The worker dropped his equipment and ran. When he reached the dock, the wind returned to normal, strong, directionless, empty. Later, researchers found something strange. Weather sensors placed around the island showed sudden, localized wind shifts only within prison grounds, patterns that didn't match surrounding conditions, as if the island itself was redirecting the air, as if it was still passing something along Robben Island Prison. No longer holds inmates, but it still carries them. So if you ever stand somewhere history tried to silence, and the wind stops behaving like weather, listen carefully, because some places don't tell stories. They repeat names, hoping someone remembers they were ever there. If you want to hear more stories from abandoned places that refuse to stay quiet, keep watching. There are many more islands, and not all of them are surrounded by water.
This building looks ordinary from the outside. A school, a courtyard, open windows. But inside, time never learned how to move forward. People don't come here to be scared. They come here to understand, and still leave shaken. This is Tuol Sleng Prison TH story, the building that learned how to watch from the street. Tuol Sleng doesn't look like a prison. It looks like it's waiting for students to return. The courtyard is open. The buildings are painted pale yellow. Shutters hang loosely from windows that once let sunlight into classrooms. Birds still land on the railings. That's what makes it unsettling, because nothing about the outside prepares you for what the inside remembers. When the Khmer Rouge converted this school into a prison, they didn't change much structurally. They added barbed wire to balconies. They sealed windows. They turned classrooms into cells. The building didn't resist. It adapted. Visitors today often say the same thing before entering. It feels quiet here. But once inside, the quiet changes. The hallways are narrow. Floors echo too clearly. Light enters in thin strips, never fully reaching the corners. Doors stand open, but the air behind them feels closed. Former staff members say the temperature inside doesn't behave normally. Certain rooms remain cold even during extreme heat. Others feel heavy, like the air has weight. In one upper floor corridor, guards once kept records. Prisoners passed through blindfolded. No one spoke. No one asked questions. Modern caretakers report something strange in this area. When no one is inside, the building still produces sound. Not footsteps, not voices, pressure, the sound of movement without motion, as if walls are adjusting themselves. At night, security staff make rounds outside only. They don't walk the interior after dark unless required. Not because of superstition, but because too many people reported the same thing. The feeling of being observed by the building itself. One guard described it this way. It's not like something is watching you. It's like the building is aware you're new. Photographs inside Tuol Sleng are infamous rows of faces, each staring straight ahead. But people who spend enough time there notice something else. The rooms seem arranged to direct attention. No matter where you stand, your eyes are drawn towards certain doorways, certain corners, certain empty spaces that feel occupied, as if the structure learned where suffering happened most and never stopped focusing on it. No reports of apparitions. No shadows chasing visitors. Just an overwhelming sense that the building is still doing what it was built to do. Record: contain. Witness Tuol Sleng Prison isn't haunted in the way people expect. Nothing reaches out. Nothing follows you home. It doesn't need to. Because this place doesn't trap spirits. It preserves moments. And when you walk through it, you don't feel fear. You feel remembered. If you want to hear more stories where the building itself never moved on, stay here. There are places around the world that look finished on the outside, but are still very much awake inside. From the outside, this prison looks calm. Yellow walls, quiet streets, a museum sign, but step closer, and you realize the building never learned how to forget. This is Hanoi Hilton Prison, HEA Low Prison. The story. The prison that still holds its shape from the street, HEA Low Prison, blends in. The walls are high but neat. The paint is warm. Motorbikes pass by without slowing. To someone who doesn't know its history, it looks like any other old colonial structure. Preserved, managed, finished. But prisons are not like other buildings. They don't empty when people leave. They keep their shape. Inside the gates, the temperature changes immediately. The air feels still, even when doors are open. The courtyard is enclosed by thick stone walls that block sound from the city. Voices from outside don't reach in, and voices from inside never seem to reach out. The hallways are narrow, built to control movement. The floors are worn smooth, not by time, but by repetition. Thousands of footsteps, always moving the same way, always stopping at the same points. Cells line the interior like compartments in a machine. Small, bare, exact. Iron doors still hang on their hinges. Some are open, some closed, but none of them feel welcoming. Light enters through high windows and bars, cutting across the walls in straight, unforgiving lines. Caretakers say something about the building feels alert. Not alive, aware. They don't like staying inside after closing hours. Not because of stories, but because of patterns. Tools left in one room are found in another. Doors carefully locked are discovered unlatched, never opened, just no longer secured. Footsteps are heard in places where the floor should echo, but doesn't. One night, during maintenance work, a guard noticed something subtle. The prison was settling. Not cracking, not shifting, breathing. The sound was deep in the walls, slow expansions and contractions, like pressure being released and reclaimed. When he stopped moving, the sound continued. When he spoke, it didn't react. But when he turned toward the old cell block, it grew louder. Inside, nothing had changed. Same empty rooms, same restraints mounted to walls, same silence. But the guard said it felt like the building was waiting to resume. Not violence, routine, as if it had been paused mid-function, and the pause was never meant to be permanent. Visitors today report the same feeling. Not fear, control. A sense that the building still knows where people should stand, where they should stop, where they should not linger too long. As if the prison never stopped being a prison. It just stopped being full. Hanoi Hilton Prison doesn't reach for you. It doesn't need to. It stands exactly as it was built to stand, measuring space, limiting movement, shaping behavior. And when you walk through it, you don't feel threatened. You feel contained. If you want to explore more abandoned places where the buildings themselves never stood down, stay with this channel. There are prisons all over the world that look like museums now, but were never designed to let go. From the outside, this prison looked clean, orderly, quiet. But once you stepped past the gate, you realized the building was never meant to be left alone. This is Changi Prison. Old, the story. The silence that stayed behind old Changi Prison stood near the edge of the island, separated from the city by distance and intention. Its outer walls were tall, pale, and rigid, designed to keep the world out and keep everything inside from being seen. From the road, It didn't look threatening. It looked controlled. Inside the gates, the air felt different immediately. Heavy, still. Sound didn't travel the way it should. Even voices felt muted, as if absorbed before they could move far. The courtyard was wide and exposed, yet somehow claustrophobic. The sun reached it easily, but warmth didn't linger. The ground bore no markings, no signs of what had happened, only worn paths where people had walked the same routes over and over again. The cell blocks were long and narrow, built to funnel movement. Doors faced inward. Windows were placed high, never meant to offer a view-only light. Inside the cells, walls were bare. No carvings. No messages. Nothing personal. Caretakers later said this absence was what disturbed them most. Other prisons were full of traces, names, scratches, desperate attempts to be remembered. Changi had been stripped of that. Not erased by time, removed on purpose. During the final years before the prison closed, guards reported something subtle but consistent. The prison made noise when it shouldn't. Not footsteps. Not voices. The sound of fabric shifting. Of weight being redistributed. Of movement without direction. One guard described it as the sound of people standing still. At night, lights were kept on in certain corridors, not because of danger, but because darkness made the space feel unfinished, like something had been interrupted and was waiting for permission to continue. After the prison closed and parts of it were demolished, workers noticed something strange. The quiet didn't leave. Standing on the cleared ground where cell blocks once stood, people still reported the same sensation, a pressure, like being expected to behave a certain way, to stand straight, to keep still, to wait. Even without walls, the space enforced rules, as if the prison no longer needed a structure, as if it had trained the land itself. Old Changi Prison doesn't appear in the way haunted places usually do. It doesn't show you faces. It doesn't replay screams. It leaves you with something quieter, the feeling that order was never lifted, only relocated. If you want to explore more abandoned prisons where the building itself never stood down, stay here. Because some places don't need walls to function anymore. They've already taught the silence what to do.